I went on a blind date and ended up meeting a total average Joe. To discourage him, I had to lie and say I was pregnant with my boss's baby. But guess what? My boss and some coworkers were actually right behind me. I was so startled, I almost tripped. "Boss." He glanced at me casually. "Careful, don't upset the baby." Me, so should I just quit now, or should I apologize on my knees? Recently, my mom got triggered by something, and she's been collecting info on all these amazing guys from relatives, forcing me to meet them. On this lovely weekend, I'm already on my third one. I really hope you consider quitting your job, Lily, and just focus on having a baby. I make $8,000 a month. If we tighten our belts, there's no need to be materialistic, buying clothes, shoes, bags, and makeup. Our life will be just fine. I fake smiled at the middle-aged guy with the thinning hair across from me, who had been talking non-stop for like 15 minutes. If he wasn't introduced by family, I'd have ripped off that toupee and thrown it at him. Also, I'm pretty busy with work, so let's not make a big deal out of the wedding. My college buddy just opened a photo studio. We can do our wedding photos there. It'll save us unnecessary expenses. You okay? I faked a gag, which finally made him shut up. You're not feeling well? I hesitate. No, it's not that. Maybe the food from this place isn't clean. There's something I might need to tell you. I'm pregnant. What? With a commotion behind me, he stood up shocked. You're pregnant and still going on dates? Playing the victim, I said, I had no choice, really. The baby is actually my boss's. A sudden cough from behind caught my attention too late. I was really into my story. I never thought he'd be such a jerk. When he found out, he dumped me and forced me to have an abortion. I mean, how could I go against him? He's my boss. The guy's jaw hit the floor, and I sipped my water pitifully, saying, Mr. Kim, since you want to marry me, you'll gladly accept the baby, right? Your mom wants a grandchild, and here's one ready-made. A chuckle came from behind, and the guy in front of me was visibly flustered. Lily, your mom didn't tell me you were pregnant. Keeping such a thing from us isn't fair. My mom doesn't know. Don't tell her. Lily, I don't think we're a match. He grabbed his bag, ready to leave, and I moved to stop him. Why? You just mentioned getting our marriage license next week. He scowled, disdain in his eyes. Lily, I heard you're a secretary at a big company. I thought you were different, but you're not decent at all, being pregnant out of wedlock. My family won't accept someone like you. Feeling wounded, I watched him leave. My smile was just forming when I turned around to find an indescribable gaze fixed on me. I was shocked, frozen in place, cold sweat running down my back. Boss. Geez, someone explain why my boss was right behind me. How long has he been there? Did he hear everything? He raised an eyebrow, relaxed. Careful, don't upset the baby. Oh no, he heard it all. I felt like crying. While considering whether to apologize, the person sitting across from him turned around. Hey, Nancy. Oh my God, it was Larry. Great, I think I'm in deep trouble now. Larry's infamous for his big mouth. If he heard it, the whole company's gonna know, right? No way, I've got to clear this up. Larry, this is all a misunderstanding. I was joking earlier, there's nothing going on between me and the boss. Please, don't spread this around the company. Larry gave me a sympathetic look, then shot a similar look at Simon like he was some kind of player. Oh, I get it. Get what? He inspected my tummy. Poor thing. Larry, I'm seriously not pregnant. Nancy, don't just stand there. It's not good for the baby. Sit down. Did he just not believe me? Going against my better judgment, I tried explaining to Simon, Boss, I'm fine, let's sit. That's not what I meant. Oh. He smiled. His smile made me super nervous, especially since I just told a big fat lie. All right, he said casually. Worried about defying him, I hesitated to sit next to Larry. but Larry stopped me. This seat's taken. Sit next to Simon. Taken? I glanced at Simon hesitantly. Come on over. His smile gave me chills. Simon's known for holding grudges. I bet he's plotting something. Reluctantly, I took the seat. He poured me a drink. Just as I was about to take it, he took it back. Oh shoot, forgot this one's cold. You shouldn't have cold drinks while pregnant. What? I stared in disbelief. What the heck is he talking about? Don't stare like that, or people will think I don't want this baby. Next to us, Larry gasped, filled with gossipy excitement. When did this? Before he could finish, something fell noisily nearby. Looking over, I saw Linda. What was she doing here? Did she hear everything? Crap, everyone knows Simon and Linda were high school sweethearts, and their families had a marriage pact. Am I a homewrecker now? Finally, you're here. You're always late, Larry joked. That was kinda funny, but Linda pretended to smile. Nancy, too? She walked over gracefully and sat in the one empty chair next to Larry. Why didn't you guys tell me Nancy would be here? I glanced nervously at Simon, who made no attempt to explain. Trying to prevent any misunderstandings, I spoke up. I was here on a blind date and bumped into my boss and them. Blind date? She said, looking surprised. Yeah, it's that time of life, you know. My family's pushing me to get married. As soon as those words left my mouth, I felt an icy vibe from the side, and a sharp gaze made me feel guilty for no reason. I shifted my hand, looking for something to drink to ease the mood. Nancy is so good-looking and capable, I bet his blind dates are going well, right? Yeah, it's going all right, but I've got a couple more to check out later. I've laid it out here, so don't get it twisted. I've lived an honest life, followed the law, and been straightforward. I have no interest in getting involved in anyone's relationship. She gave me a strange look, then glanced at Simon and chuckled softly, probing. I just heard you two talking about kids. What's that about? I quickly cleared it up. I was just joking with the boss. No kids involved. Simon handed me a drink, catching my earlier subtle gesture, which surprised me. Thirsty, I took a sip without thinking twice. To my dismay, the drink was sickeningly sweet. I couldn't hold back and gagged a bit. The two across from me jumped, asking, "Are you okay?" I swallowed down my nausea, waving my hand, "I'm fine." Larry had a thought and teasingly said, "Nancy, you might want to watch your diet in the future." Simon gently patted my back. Was it too sour? His expression was helpless. I told you to stop drinking so many acidic drinks lately, but you never listen. Puzzled, I looked at him. When did I? Just about to argue, my gaze fell on the coffee spoon next to him, and I froze. In a flash, I understood. No wonder this drink tasted like pure sugar. He had dumped it all in there. That stingy man. Just because I took advantage of him once, he holds a grudge. What's wrong? Your face is all red. Is it hot? He asked innocently. I gritted my teeth in fury. But, since he is the boss and I did talk behind his back, I'll let him have his petty revenge for now. I plastered a smile, barely hiding my dissatisfaction. Larry's curious eyes nearly popped out of his head. You both kept this so well hidden. I never noticed all these years in the company. I decided I wouldn't bother explaining and just smiled shyly. Linda's still here. Let's see how he plans to explain this. I always keep things professional. Huh? I stared wide-eyed at Simon. What's gotten into him today? Have I ever known him to be so mischievous? I've known him for 5 years now. Despite his prankster ways, he usually respects boundaries. Today though. Seeing my confusion, Simon leaned in and whispered, I want Linda to give up her expectations about me. Help me with that, and I'll forgive you for earlier. Stunned, I asked, how? As my secretary, do I really need to teach you such a trivial thing? Or are you actually dumbing down? he replied sarcastically. Irritated, yet realizing the others were fixated on us, I made up my mind for the sake of my career. I boldly tapped Simon on the shoulder before he could react, then leaned on his shoulder, acting bashful. Oh dear, why'd you spill it like that? I felt Simon stiffen, giving me a dark look. Larry, across from us, looked shocked. I was utterly embarrassed. But since I'd already started, I might as well go all in. Yes, we do have a child, I declared with the bravado of a martyr, not daring to glance at their reactions, missing Simon's small smirk. Linda's face went pale, trembling with her cup in hand. But we accidentally lost the child, I paused and added, feigning worry. It wasn't his fault. It's my own clumsiness. There it was, the perfect touch of false innocence. Simon tilted his head at me, his eyes amused. Feeling guilty, I quickly changed the subject. Larry, Linda, since Simon and I are in an office romance, we'd really appreciate it if you two kept it under wraps for us. Simon? Larry's voice changed. What? Nothing, Larry swallowed nervously. I've got to run. Linda finally couldn't take it anymore. She stood up, shooting Simon several lingering looks, likely hoping he'd stop her. But Simon just kept his gaze on me, gently asking, Babe, shall I take you home later? Babe. That was gross. Linda left. I awkwardly settled back into my seat. Larry commented, You guys sure know how to play it. But Simon, if Lily is your girlfriend, why do you boss her around like a lapdog? What the heck? Who's a dog now? Larry continued, You've got her working weekends, staying late, and traveling with you. Mid-sentence, realization struck him, Oh man, people said you were clueless, but clearly you outshine me at this game. I couldn't quite follow Larry's logic. But even though Simon pushes me outside of work hours, I'm not all that upset. Despite being a hard ass about work, he actually pays very well for overtime. Plus, traveling with him isn't all that bad. The flights, hotels, and food. We get the same treatments. What other boss is that generous? When Larry left, I couldn't be sure, but when Simon spoke, it was just the two of us. Come on, I'll take you back. No need. You have plans? He asked with a sly look. Planning to see those other two guys? Two guys? I paused, remembering what I said to fend Linda off earlier. No, it's just a class reunion. I'll still take you, he insisted. Caught off guard, I hadn't actually planned to go. Aren't you busy? I wouldn't want to waste your personal time. I can manage myself, I said, hopeful. We've done this before. Why the sudden formality? Did you do something that you feel guilty for? He squinted, suspicious. Oh no, nothing like that. Unable to deflect further, I resigned to hop in his car, feeling utterly defeated. But the class reunion? I really didn't plan on going. It's been years since we graduated high school, and I've never once attended any of the reunions. But this time, Evan, the big shot from back then, is coming, and if I show up too, they'll probably think I'm just there because of him. After all, when I confessed to him and got rejected, everyone knew about it. Everyone knew I liked Evan. Sigh, I was in the car, switching between frowning at my Instagram and sighing at the window scenery, not even realizing we were already at the venue. Simon undid his seatbelt and flicked my forehead. I was startled back to reality. What's up? He was speechless. We're here. Oh, thanks boss. Bye, boss. I got out of the car, playing by the rules. The plan was to sneak off as soon as he left, but as soon as I stepped out, I ran into a high school classmate. Lily, you actually came. I gave up. It's been 7 years, how'd they recognize me right away? We were just talking about whether you'd show up, and here you are. We heard Evan's back, and you came right away. You look prettier than ever. Bet Evan's gonna regret rejecting you once he sees you, huh? They joked around, but I just wanted them to shut it. Did they think they were funny? Oh, your car. They finally noticed the car beside me. Wow, that's a pricey one. Lily, you must be doing well these days. Seeing Simon in the car, Charlie hesitated a bit. Your boyfriend dropped you off? I gave Simon a nervous glance, unsure whether to deny or confirm it. Charlie and the others knew about my past with Evan, and they were probably waiting to gossip about me tonight. I really didn't want to be their entertainment. While hesitating, Simon got out of the car, walked over, and wrapped an arm around my shoulder. I didn't even have time to be shocked before he said, "Nice to meet you all, I'm Lily's boyfriend, Simon." I stared at him wide-eyed, and he gave me a knowing smile. I've never been more grateful for his ability to read people. It usually annoys or even angers me when he sees through my thoughts. But this time, with just one look, he understood my predicament and helped me, despite everything. I was kinda touched. All those years working my butt off for the company were worth it. Everyone else seemed equally shocked. They awkwardly greeted us after a moment of silence. Evan showed up right then, with Mia, my high school bestie. Both seemed surprised to see me, probably because I'd said in the group chat that I wouldn't come. But Evan seemed particularly taken aback when he saw Simon with his arm around me. Looking at Simon, he hesitated. "You are?" Simon gave him a cold glance, and Evan just looked at me complicatedly. I was confused. "Lily, long time no see," Mia greeted me in a fake friendly manner. I glanced at her, not really in the mood to talk. "Yeah, long time." She didn't care, just looked at Simon. "Your friend?" I gave a nonchalant yeah and, not caring if Simon minded, pulled him inside. I could still faintly hear Charlie and the others joking. "You two went to college together, went abroad together, now you're back together." No way. You really blew it back then, turning her down. With just us two now, Simon started teasing me again. I glanced at the arms still around my shoulder. Did he not notice it? "Boss, everyone's gone. You can let go now." "Are you sure?" He raised an eyebrow. "So someone doesn't need my help anymore?" His reminder jolted me. "Boss, can you do me a favor tonight?" He looked all disdainful. "Lily, you're so opportunistic, flattering me when you need something, ignoring me when you don't." I was wrong. I put on a good attitude. "Boss, if you pretend to be my boyfriend tonight, I'll do whatever you want in the future. No complaints." He pretended to think, "Okay, I usually care for my employees, so I'll help you this once." Internally, I rolled my eyes but kept a pleasing smile. "But Lily, I didn't know you were so hung up on him. No boyfriend all these years, 'cause of an old flame?" I smiled stiffly. "Boss, isn't it because of you that I didn't have a boyfriend?" "Me?" He looked down at me, eyes flashing something strange. "Yeah, because you always made me work late. How could I meet anyone new?" "So, Lily's blaming me now. Weren't you just saying no complaints from now on?" When we walked into the private dining room, everyone had this all-knowing curiosity. I felt a chill. I saw Evan and his crew were already there. "Lily, long time no see. Seems like you're doing well. Charlie said your boyfriend drove you here in a fancy car?" In just a few minutes, everyone knew I brought a boyfriend. Charlie and the boys must have spread the word a lot. "Lily, what does your boyfriend do?" "Here, Evan's the wealthiest among us." "Wonder if your boyfriend's richer?" As soon as they finished, I heard Simon chuckle beside me. It was a laugh like he'd heard a joke. Thinking I misheard, I looked at him and saw him looking at Evan, who seemed to avoid his gaze. "Why so guilty, Evan?" Then Faye, who never got along with me, piped up. "What, did you hire some guy to pretend to be your boyfriend?" With me silent, troublemaker Faye started talking. I shot a worried look at Simon, who smirked at me. "A hired guy?" I forced a smile. "Let's talk about this later." He raised an eyebrow, whispering to me, "We'll settle this later." Faye, ignored, got angry. "You never attended reunions before, and now with Evan and Mia here, you show up, bringing a so-called boyfriend?" Makes you wonder if you still have feelings for Evan but don't want the embarrassment, so you found some hired guy to pose as your boyfriend. Suddenly, when Evan was called out, he looked over with a complicated expression. Lily and I are just friends. She already has a boyfriend, so let's not joke around. Everyone was shocked. Evan, you've changed. You're actually standing up for Lily now? Jake teased, what's up with you today? You've been out of it since earlier. Just got back to the States and struggling to adjust? Evan glanced at Simon and kept quiet. Mia, sitting nearby, spoke up, stop giving him a hard time. Evan just got back and went straight to visit his uncle's family before coming here. He hasn't had a moment to rest. You guys know who his uncle is, the Smiths. Enough. Evan suddenly interrupted loudly, then gave Simon an uneasy glance. Mia looked a little hurt. Someone nearby asked, Evan, since you're related to the Smiths, my cousin is about to graduate and really wants to join G Corporation. Maybe you could help out? Evan glanced at Simon several times, his eyes wandering. The Smiths are all about fairness and hate favoritism. I can't help with that. G Corporation? I mean, there aren't many families like the Smiths in our city. I turned to look at Simon, who seemed completely unbothered. We brought him to pretend to be my boyfriend and make a stand, but now he looks like he's just enjoying the show. Oh right, they say the current chairman of the Smiths is quite young and capable. Does anyone know his name? Someone asked, curious. Evan was about to speak, but Mia beat him to it. It's Evan's cousin, Simon. Evan and he went to the same school abroad. Simon was 3 years ahead, quite the star, and graduated with honors. Simon? That name sounds familiar. Someone mumbled. I glanced at the person next to me in surprise, but before I could ask, Jake exclaimed, no way. Lily, your boyfriend's name is Simon too. After saying that, he seemed to realize something, and his expression suddenly froze. Everyone's expressions turned complicated as they looked at Simon. Someone cautiously asked, are you J Corporation's CEO? Simon glanced at Evan, his lips curling into a teasing smile. You can ask him. Everyone was confused, like what's going on? Evan looked pale. He cut him off, smiling, don't you call me cousin behind my back. Evan's face immediately turned pale, unsure of what to say. Simon looked at him mockingly. Evan, your dad's my family's driver. We funded your studies abroad. When did I become your cousin? There was a collective gasp. What's he implying here? I was also taken aback, like, what is this twist? No way, is it what I'm thinking? Mr. G, aren't you Evan's cousin? Is there some mix-up here? Mia couldn't keep her smile. She was ready to brag today in front of Lily. Instead, Evan didn't say a word and ran out. Feeling embarrassed, Mia followed suit, giving me a glare before leaving. Everyone was stunned, realizing the truth. Was this campus star, with a good family and grades, not who he claimed to be? We always saw him getting dropped off by a driver from the Smiths, assuming they were related. Turns out his dad's just a driver. After being duped so long, we had just mocked Lily, questioning if her boyfriend was just some pretty boy for hire. Starting to feel uneasy, Faye was first to apologize. Lily, I was just joking earlier, don't take it seriously. I glanced at her, no worries. Then I looked around, my boyfriend just came to drop me off. He has stuff to do later, so we won't stay long. Don't leave yet. It's been 7 years since we've seen you. We didn't even get to catch up. Everyone was suddenly all friendly, but I knew they were more interested in Simon. I was stuck, glancing at Simon for help. I wanted him to steer me out, thinking no one would block the Smith's boss, but he pretended not to notice. Can't say no to such warm hospitality, right? So, we ended up sitting down. Once seated, they started buttering Simon up, asking questions, mainly about how we met and how long we've been together. Simon answered patiently, though all made up stories. Stuff like how he'd seen me once when I was a junior and fell head over heels, but he was headed abroad back then, so he didn't approach me. Once he returned, bam, he pursued me hard. Everyone looked at me enviously. I was just impressed by his storytelling skills. Truth is, I met Simon in my 3rd year during a summer when I was bored and looking for an internship. I nearly got conned into signing a sketchy contract. Simon showed up, exposed the con, and mocked me for being naive. Since then, by some twist of fate, we'd bump into each other constantly. He often visited our school as an investor, and our department head, knowing I was acquainted with him, always had me host. Over time, we got to know each other well. Even though he was blunt and critical at times, he was genuinely helpful with my academic and career advice. We were kind of like boss and subordinate, but also friends. At least that's how I saw it. Otherwise, I wouldn't use his name on my dates. 3 years ago, I hadn't planned on joining the Smiths. But after facing rejections everywhere, I took the back door. Although I never understood why I didn't get hired. I was top of my class. What was I missing during interviews? Lily, when you get married, make sure to invite us old classmates. I spaced out for a moment. How did we get to marriage talk already? I glanced awkwardly at Simon next to me, who managed to keep a straight face. When are you planning to propose, Mr. G? They were testing the waters, but I knew them well enough to tell from their expressions that they didn't think Simon would marry me and was just playing around. That depends on when agrees. I'm ready anytime. Wow, Simon really gave me face there. I chuckled as I brushed it off. No rush, let's take our time. How can it not be urgent? I can't wait. I want to marry you, he said. With everyone chiming in, his clear eyes were locked on mine, and I was stunned for a moment. For a second, I couldn't tell if he was serious or not. Almost believed it, and my heart skipped a beat. It took me over an hour before I finally got a chance to take Simon out of there. He had a few drinks at the party and couldn't drive, so I took the driver's seat, no problem. I was going to take him straight home, but he wanted some fresh air, so I drove around aimlessly with him. If I'd known I'd run into an old blind date, I would never have agreed to Simon's little walk. As soon as Nancy saw me, he ran over all enthusiastic. Lily, who's this? Simon, a little foggy from the drinks, said, her boyfriend, Simon. I didn't even have time to be surprised before Nancy dropped a bomb. Simon? Oh, you guys are back together? That's great. Lily, you told me your boss wanted you to have an abortion, and I was worried sick. But now that you're back together, he'll be responsible for you and the baby, right? I'm speechless. Feeling Simon's sharp gaze on me, I wished I could bury my head in the ground. Nancy left, and I wanted to escape, too. But Simon held me back. Care to explain? I forced an awkward smile. Boss, if I said it's a misunderstanding, would you believe me? His intense, deep eyes stayed on me without blinking. Seems like you've been painting quite the picture of me behind my back, huh? I've already run into 2 of those stories today. So, how many more are there? Boss, I was wrong. I'm sorry. You going to do it again? Well, my mom keeps pushing these blind dates on me, and that excuse just worked. Pregnant with my child? No. I dumped you and told you to get an abortion? Really sorry about that. You've pinned all these crimes on me. Wouldn't I be letting you down if I didn't live up to them? Live up to? I looked up. His black eyes were enigmatic and profound. Lily. For some reason, my heartbeat went haywire. I didn't drink tonight, so why's my heart racing like this? I'm hungry. How about you treat me to dinner? He suddenly said. I breathed a sigh of relief. Looked like this whole thing was over. But it was late. Most restaurants were closed, and after driving around, we ended up at a food stall. Thankfully, he didn't care. A food stall and no drinks? Not happening. But boss, I still have to drive. No worries. I'll have Nancy come over and drive. Alright, he's helped me big time today, and I've been gossiping about him. Consider it an apology. My tolerance is pretty low, and Simon never had me drink at work functions. After a few glasses, I started to feel tipsy. As I got into the car, I couldn't help but complain about him. His face went dark. But I was feeling the buzz, calling him petty, saying he had a sharp tongue and no empathy, even calling him a slave driver. And as if that wasn't enough, I made him call me dad. Moving on, I even started getting handsy, pinching his face, talking about his smooth skin like he was some pretty boy. Nancy drove us to Simon's place, sweating bullets. When Simon took me inside, Nancy looked worried sick for me. When the lights came on, I looked up to see a pair of bright eyes, so close. There it was again, that heart-stopping sensation. I blinked, acting on a sudden impulse, and leaned in. Those bright eyes went wide with shock, then slowly turned deep. It was strange but intriguing. I felt dizzy as if being carried around. There were two urgent thumping sounds. My vision went dark, and all I could hear was heavy breathing. You have 3 seconds to regret it. Just say stop, and I will. What do you mean? I don't understand. Who am I? It was dark, I couldn't tell. Little impatient with the stalling, I snapped, Simon, can you do it or not? Just as I spoke, my breath got taken away again. At some point, I must have started breathing again, and heard mumbled words. Wasn't prepared, not tonight. Waking up, daylight flooded in. I looked at the mess around me. My head ached as last night's memories came rushing back. My body went cold. I went nutso drunk and kissed Simon. Panicking, I glanced at my clothes, not mine. Changed? Who changed them? I clutched my head in despair. I couldn't remember anything after the kiss. Did I really sleep with Simon? Finding no trace of my clothes in the room, I got up and rushed out, ready to scream for Simon, only to find a classy middle-aged woman in the living room. Simon, I nearly lost it. Hi, Mrs. Simon. Grace snapped back from her surprise, gave me a once-over, noticed my attire and the marks on my neck, and looked a bit awkward. Did I come at a bad time? Embarrassed. No, please sit, What was I supposed to say? Overnight at her son's place, wearing his clothes, she must think I'm easy, not self-respecting. Help. You're up. Simon's calm voice came from the balcony, and I breathed a sigh of relief, looking to him for rescue. But he just casually hung up the phone, lightly explaining, Mom, I forgot to tell you earlier, there's someone here. Simon, with nerves as solid as brass, could hand an Oscar. In this situation, he remained unfazed, as if it was no big deal. Did you need me for something today? Grace glanced at me. I came because I heard something from Larry and wanted to ask you about it. But now, doesn't really seem necessary. She paused, giving my belly a complex look. Try to be careful during the first few months. First few months? Got it, Mom. Stop just talking. Take a look at that girl and see if anything about her is okay. Grace suddenly snapped. Simon remained unfazed, but her outburst startled me. Grace noticed she scared me, and immediately softened her tone. Lily, when are your parents free? Our families should meet up. I'm still in a daze and didn't dare question Grace, so I just looked at Simon in confusion. He walked over and threw his arm around my shoulders. Mom, there's no rush on this. No rush? She's been pregnant for a few months now. Do you want her belly showing before wearing a wedding dress? Grace fumed again. I finally understood. Grace misunderstood, thinking I was pregnant with Simon's kid. I hurried to explain, Ma'am, there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not pregnant, and I'm not in that kind of relationship with your son. But Grace wore an expression like, look at yourself before you speak. I was at a loss for words. The doorbell suddenly rang. I glanced nervously at Simon. Why does his house have so many visitors today? I went to open the door. Grace and I stood silently in the living room, exchanging awkward glances. Then, just a few seconds later, my mom's thundering voice came through, Lily. You've really outdone yourself. Staying out all night is one thing, but staying at someone else's place? I froze, looking toward the door. Mom. Seeing my clothes and the marks on my neck, she didn't care if it was someone else's house or if anyone else was around. She went to hit me. I was so scared I ran for my life. Mom, let's talk about this at home. What a mess. Simon and Grace also stepped in to stop her, all four of us in a tangle. When we finally calmed down and talked it out, I found out that my mom had called me a bunch of times. Simon noticed her concern and answered, giving her the address. Mother-in-law, I was just thinking of visiting you soon, Grace chimed in. But my mom wasn't having it. Who's your mother-in-law? I felt uneasy, tugging at her sleeve. Mom, this is my boss and his mom. Be polite. I'll explain when we're home. Mother-in-law, there's no time to waste. Lily is already pregnant, and we should hurry along with wedding plans. Seeing my mom's eyes practically pop out of her head, I knew I was done for. This got out of hand fast. There's no way I can explain this. Mother-in-law, should we step outside for a chat? Give Lily some time to freshen up. Grace seemed unsure, thinking her son knocked up a girl before marriage. How embarrassing. My mom looked at me, then Simon, finally settling on Grace. Fine, we'll talk outside. They left, and I collapsed onto the sofa, seeing Simon laughing. Anger bubbled up. Boss, aren't you going to explain all this? He raised an eyebrow, looking innocent. What do I need to explain? The pregnancy rumors were your doing, remember? I couldn't really deny it. And about you taking advantage of me in your drunken state last night, we still haven't talked about that. My face flushed, both embarrassed and flustered. So, did we actually sleep together last night? What do you think? He arched an eyebrow, a mischievous grin on his face. Doubt crept in. He had marks on his neck too, clearly my doing. I drank too much, can't remember anything. Anyway, you didn't lose anything. Or maybe. How did I not lose anything? He suddenly pulled out his phone, showing me an Instagram post. It was our company group. Larry, that big mouth, had been blabbing since last night about Simon becoming a dad. The whole company knew now. Even though he hadn't mentioned my name, it wouldn't be long before someone figured it out. Grace already had, for crying out loud. Now that I'm suddenly going to be a dad, don't you think you should take responsibility? Where am I supposed to find a child out of thin air? Tears welled up. How am I supposed to take responsibility? I'm not even pregnant, we still have time to pretend. Oh. He leaned in closer, his intense gaze locked onto me. Last night, Lily seemed very eager. Who knows, maybe she hit it on the first try. My face went pale. No way, right? He studied me for a while, making my heart race, then chuckled lightly. So you really don't remember? Huh. I'm just messing with you, nothing happened last night. I was overjoyed. Really? He raised an eyebrow, standing up. Lily, the way you pretend nothing happened after getting dressed reminds me of a player. But speaking of clothes, I'm puzzled. Since nothing happened last night, where did these clothes come from? I sulked. I've been totally ripped off. I have no memory of anything, and even if I did take advantage, I don't recall it. I didn't experience anything and you saw everything. You threw up all over yourself, even messed up my bed. What else was I supposed to do if not change you? He seemed exasperated, paused for a moment. Do you feel shortchanged? I'll strip for you now. With that, he started to remove his shirt. I hurriedly stopped him. That's when my mom and Grace walked back in. They saw Simon and me having an intense moment on the sofa. Both stopped in their tracks, then, in sync, said, "You two carry on, we'll head out first." Simon glanced back at the closed door. At this rate, Lily, there's no way you'll escape this situation unscathed. I felt the stress closing in. What do we do now, get married? Are you serious? I almost thought he was interested in me the way he sounded so eager. To this day, I don't know how I managed to leave Simon's place. I practically fled in my panic. Didn't even change my clothes, ran off in his loungewear. Looking back, there wasn't much point in running. I'd just see him again in the office on Monday. I'm his secretary after all. At home, my mom was already on the phone with my aunts, saying I was getting married. Wait, what? I rushed to stop her, trying to explain, but she just listened calmly and assured me she wasn't mad, and that I didn't need to hide anything. That deflated me a bit. I still have no idea what she talked about with Grace earlier. Come Monday, walking into the office, I was instantly surrounded by co-workers. I thought they knew and was feeling guilty, but they were actually asking when Simon and Linda were getting married. Lily, you're close with the boss. Have you heard anything? My mood instantly took a hit. Why can't y'all be suspicious of me for a change? Why is everyone doubting Linda? After making excuses to everyone, I headed to the secretary's office. Nancy said the boss wasn't around. Just as I was about to relax, Nancy added that he went to meet with Linda. I know our company is in talks with Linda's company for a collaboration, but for some reason, this time, I felt bothered. Around noon, Larry came to ask me to lunch. I got annoyed just thinking about how he promised to keep things discreet, then couldn't keep his mouth shut. Larry, just go eat yourself, I got work. No can do. I'm close with Simon since we were kids. He's not here, so I gotta take care of you. Seriously. There were still people in the secretary's office, so I quickly interrupted him. We headed to a nearby restaurant. Larry was acting super cautious the whole time, like I was pregnant or something. I finally had enough and said, Larry, can you act normal? He's not usually like this. Well, it's 'cause you're pregnant, right? Gotta take care of pregnant ladies. I told you we lost it, remember? Got it, got it. He winked at me and poured me a cup of warm water. I was speechless. By the way, Lily, look at you, you managed even to win over Grace's mom? Break up with me, you liar. You made me lose so much face. I was just thinking about how to explain to Larry that yesterday was just a joke when suddenly Mia's voice erupted from the other side of the restaurant. I looked over and there was Evan. Evan? You know him? He's Simon's family chauffeur's son. I've seen him a few times, Larry said, and then, realizing, asked, you know him too? High school classmates. Larry was astonished, this world is small. You and Evan were high school classmates? As we were talking, they started arguing loudly from the other side. You think you're all that? I was just using you to annoy Lily. Just wanted to take what she wants. As if I care about you. If it weren't for your family's money, I wouldn't waste my time. Compete with Lily? From high school till now, have you ever won against her? She's linked with Simon now. She's way ahead again. In some fights, it's two people arguing, but it's the third person who feels awkward. I was really impressed. Arguing loudly in public is one thing, but did they have to call out my name so loudly? We're so close to the office. What if other employees hear this? I'd be so embarrassed. Lily, your taste back then. Larry looked at me with the same disdainful expression Simon often wears. I didn't bother to explain, I was young and stupid back then. Explaining this is really complicated. In high school, my feelings for Evan were nothing like everyone thought. I was a bit of a loner and didn't have many friends. Mia used to hang out with me a lot, and I didn't mind her company due to her warmth. But Mia kept talking about Evan, saying everyone thought we were a match and encouraged me to pursue him. Evan played basketball, and she'd drag me to watch. He'd join a club activity, and she'd sign me up without asking. If someone wrote Evan a love letter, she'd write one too and sign my name. Over time, rumors spread that I liked Evan. I didn't care about opinions, so I didn't bother clarifying. My only encounters with Evan weren't events but just polite nods when he'd get out of his dad's car at the school gates. The one time there was a bit of an interaction was after our college entrance exams. It rained, and his dad, who'd parked nearby to pick him up, kindly offered me an umbrella. To return the umbrella, I looked for him at the graduation party. But an unwanted letter slipped from the umbrella before I could even speak. Amidst Mia and her friends' coaxing, it was passed around, despite it not being from me. That's how I was forced into being labeled an admirer of Evan. But that wasn't the most embarrassing part. Evan's reaction to the loud reading of the letter was, "Lily, don't joke around. I wouldn't dare accept this, it'd be the end of me." That response got twisted and passed down, painting me as this intense suitor that terrified Evan. Even years after graduation, my confession was infamous. I'm not sure when Evan and Mia left, but Larry kept asking about my history with Evan, which was irritating. I finished eating quickly and returned to the office. Simon still hadn't come back, and I didn't see him for the rest of the day. Does meeting with Linda take that long? I felt uneasy. I never knew I could be so moody. When I got home, my mom wouldn't stop asking about progress with Simon. I talked to his mom. How about a wedding by year end? New Year's will be lively. Mom, I'm not pregnant. There's nothing between me and the boss. Quit stirring things up, okay? He didn't even speak to me today. No relationship. But you stayed at his place. It's a misunderstanding. Fine, if it is, then go on a blind date for me. You have to get married this year. After days of nagging, I ran away in the night. Crashed at my best friend's place. I just couldn't endure her chance anymore. You shouldn't be too good, or you'll end up being hated. Remember your high school popularity? Feigning shyness, I said, am I really that good? My friend twitched at the corner of her mouth. Well, not exactly. You were decent looking, did okay in studies, but had a moody face, so you looked unapproachable. Why have you been checking your phone constantly? Waiting for someone? No. I nervously put away my phone. Simon being a workaholic was something I always knew. Ever since striking a deal with Linda's company, he's been swamped for days. He seems to have forgotten that little incident between us. Not once has he mentioned it since I ran out of his place that day. Our boss is such a great negotiator. The lawn group actually agreed to give up 10%. But seriously, what's 10%? I bet the two companies are about to become family. When I went out to get coffee, a few coworkers were gossiping loudly, and I couldn't help but overhear. To be honest, that day at the restaurant, when Simon had me pretend to be his pregnant girlfriend to scare off Linda, I thought his deal with the L group was doomed. Who would have thought not only did it survive, but Linda's being generous too? It doesn't add up. Unless something happened between them that I don't know about, and now they're back on. What was the point of my involvement then? Turns out, the real fool was me. Lily, your coffee's overflowing, an employee's reminder snapped me back to reality. I returned to the secretary's office, a little absent-mindedly, and once I sat down, Simon came over to my desk. It took a couple of knocks before I was alert. What are you thinking about? I've been calling you for ages. I stood up, attentive. Sorry, boss, is there something you need? He paused for a moment. You don't have to talk to me like that. Sit down and talk. I didn't. Is there something you need? He cleared his throat. Do you have time tonight? Folks around started glancing over silently. Is it work-related? No, I want to take you out to dinner. As a treat. No need, boss, it's just my job. Since when do bosses take specific employees out for dinner? Before, I didn't care, I'd never turn down free food. But now, I don't like such easily misunderstood actions. Actually, I have something to tell you. Whatever it is, you can tell me now. I'm moving tonight, can't make it. Moving? Where to? He was surprised. That's my personal business, boss. Honestly, it's all because my mom keeps nagging me about progressing with Simon. Moving out is the only way to get some peace. It's my first time living alone at 25, and I'm a bit excited. I didn't have much to pack, had the new place ready by 8 p.m. As I went to a nearby convenience store for supplies, I bumped into Evan. I was going to ignore him, but he called out, "What a coincidence, Lily, what brings you here?" Sure, these days everyone's been mocking him in the group chat for pretending to be a rich kid. But Evan never actually did anything bad to me. I live nearby. Really? Me too. Didn't see you before, though. You just moved. Yeah, tonight. As I chatted, I finished paying, didn't even notice when the cashier slipped a little something into my bag as a substitute for change. Before I could say goodbye to Evan, he enthusiastically walked me out and insisted on carrying my bag. I gave in. "It's late, you're new here, shouldn't walk alone." "I'll walk you." I didn't refuse, fine by me. As we strolled alongside each other, he suddenly said, "Actually, back then I didn't reject you on purpose. I was happy you liked me." I frowned. "Why bring this up now? Now that you know I'm Simon's chauffeur's son, there's nothing to hide. I've always been overshadowed by Simon. He's the owner's son, I'm just a helps kid. Worked hard to change my fate. I'm busy, just get to the point." A bit embarrassed, he cleared his throat. "Back then, I rejected you because Simon threatened me. He told me if I accepted you, he'd fire my dad and ruin my graduation and study abroad plans. What does accepting or rejecting me have to do with him? Why would he threaten you?" I was baffled by how absurd this was. I didn't know before, but now I do. He liked you and used his power to threaten me. I frowned. I didn't even know Simon in high school. I'm telling you this so you know Simon isn't a great guy. Be careful with him, don't get hurt. Now he's trying to sow discord. Too bad he miscalculated. Simon and I are just boss and employee, not a couple. After sending Evan off, I started heading upstairs. Then I noticed someone in the shadows nearby. It startled me. Thank goodness he spoke. Still got feelings for him? "Simon. You scared me." He walked up, looking gloomy. "So you turned me down tonight just to be with him? Where'd he get that idea? Why are you here?" "Asked my mom to ask your mom. Got something special to do here?" He frowned. "Off the clock, don't call me that." I kept it serious, off the clock or not, you're still my boss. He looked me up and down, making me uncomfortable. "What's wrong? What's up with you? Why are you so distant? Got a problem with me?" I felt guilty, turned to head upstairs. Who'd dare have an issue with the boss? "It's late, see yourself out." I didn't expect him to follow, so I broke into a run. But he wouldn't quit, chasing after me. Two people sprinting up the stairs late at night would probably freak anyone out. Eventually, I was exhausted, slumped against the wall by my door. My shopping bags were scattered everywhere. "What do you want?" He glanced at the mess, hesitated before staring at something. His gaze made me stop. I followed his eyes. Even I froze. I didn't buy that thing. I noticed his face getting more and more serious, which made me anxious for no reason. Hastily, I gathered my things and stood up. There might have been a mix-up at the checkout. I opened the door beside me, about to go in, when he stopped it with his hand. "I'm your boss and I'm here at your place, aren't you gonna invite me in?" His face was as gloomy as a storm about to hit. I didn't dare refuse, so I stepped aside. "I just moved here tonight. There's not much to eat. If you want a drink, there's only bottled water." He walked in, casually looking around the empty living room. "Evan lives here too. Did you move here because of him? Why bring him up again?" "I didn't know he lived here." "In that case, you should move somewhere else. I'll get someone to help you move." He looked at me seriously. For some reason, I suddenly recalled what Evan had told me. Almost without thinking, I blurted out, "Evan said the reason he rejected me all those years ago was because you threatened him?" He was stunned for a second, then raised an eyebrow. "So what if I did?" I didn't expect him to admit it so readily. I was at a loss for words. To be honest, it wasn't really a threat. I merely mentioned that if he turned you down, I'd help him study abroad. Eventually, he chose studying abroad over you, so you can't blame me for his decision. That's not quite what Evan told me. Are you questioning me for him now? Are you blaming me for coming between you and him? He slowly walked towards me, a hint of displeasure in his eyes, prompting me to step back anxiously. I accidentally bumped into a shelf behind me, stumbled a bit, and the bag I had just packed fell open again. The little box stood out, catching our eyes again. I instinctively looked up at him, only to meet his deep, unfathomable gaze. Damn it, just looking into his eyes made my heart race. Fearing he'd hear it, my brain short-circuited, and I blurted out, I can't make use of this thing, so I might as well give it to you. An awkward silence filled the air. 1 second, 2 seconds, he casually picked up the hot potato and walked over to me. Since you're so sincere about giving it to me, shouldn't I personally test it out to see how effective it is? What? The tension in the air made my pounding heart seem exceptionally loud. That's not something you test casually. I swallowed, looking up to meet his gaze. For a while, as I thought he might push me further, he suddenly changed the subject. It's getting late. You should get some rest. Then he left. And took the little box with him. As I stared at the closed door, I felt an unexpected sense of loss. I despise myself. The next morning, I was just about to head to work when I ran into Evan moving out downstairs. He glared at me bitterly. I kindly advised you, and not only did you ignore it, but you even had him kick me out. Lily, you're really ruthless. I was confused. What was he even talking about? Ignoring him, I turned around and left. Over the weekend, I went shopping with my childhood friend, picking out clothes, when Mia and Faye showed up. Intent on causing trouble, they'd buy whatever we liked, making my friend so mad she was ready to fight. If you can't afford it, don't come in, Mia taunted, acting like a shrew. Faye chimed in, Lily, I heard Simon's engaged to Linda from his family. A gal like you should quit dreaming about marrying rich. Each word was nastier than the last. My friend wanted to clap back, but I held her back. I pulled her away to leave. However, I never expected to run into Simon here, and with Linda, no less. Their appearance at this moment felt like a slap in the face. Sure enough, Mia and Faye laughed even harder. Simon approached me, what's going on? He glanced at Mia and Faye, piecing things together, is someone bothering you? He raised his hand, intending to ruffle my hair affectionately, but I dodged with my head down. He froze for a moment. Faye pressed, Simon, I heard your fiancée is Linda from the family. Is that true? Before Simon could reply, Linda interjected, surprised, when was I Simon's fiancée? How come I didn't know? Her words stunned Mia and Faye, you're Linda. Linda chuckled, then looked at them mockingly, who are you guys to spread rumors around? But everybody's saying it. How can it be us spreading rumors? Everybody's saying it? Simon paused, seemingly surprised. He glanced at me, silent, and seemed to realize something, looking a bit annoyed. Let's talk. He suddenly grabbed my hand and walked off. My friend was anxious, about to follow, but Linda stopped her, don't worry, they're just having a lover's quarrel. My friend looked at Linda, you're really not Simon's fiancée? Linda was amused, of course not. What do you want to talk about? I was wrong. Huh. I lied to you before. Linda isn't my admirer, let alone my fiancé. Actually, we're kind of family. Her mom and my mom are cousins. The information was overwhelming. I got a bit dazed, then before. I made a bet with her. Whoever ends up single last has to cut our company collaboration project by 10%. So when Linda found out I was pregnant, she reacted so badly because she was losing money. Turns out I wasn't the clown, I was just a pawn. Boss, you don't need to tell me this. My friend is still waiting. I turned to leave. He called after me, but there's actually a main reason. I turned back, meeting his clear, focused eyes. For 7 years, I imagined countless scenarios of how I'd tell you this sincerely, but I didn't expect it to be here, in a mall, under these circumstances. He spoke with some regret. But I think I guessed that sentence. Evan had said he liked me. Sure enough. I like you. The voice in my heart and his voice overlapped. I looked up, meeting his gaze, neither moving nor speaking. I could feel my heart racing, my breathing getting heavier, blood running faster. Simon said he likes me. We've known each other for years. Sure, I've sometimes wondered if he might like me back, but I never dared to hope it was true. But now he really came out and said it. Seeing I wasn't reacting, Simon got a little uneasy. I knew saying it would freak you out. Lily, I didn't mean to hide it for so long. I just wanted to take my time, but I didn't realize not saying anything would make you go through so much ridicule and grief. When did you start liking me? My eyes shone as I looked at him. He paused for a moment, then, seeing my answer in my eyes, his eyebrows lifted in delight. He came up to me and hesitantly touched my hair. This time, I didn't dodge. That night at the reunion, I wasn't lying. Love at first sight in high school? But I didn't see you back then. But I saw you. The memory of ditching my friend hit me. I pulled Simon along to find her but discovered the store was empty. Just as I was about to call her, I noticed she'd posted on Instagram about going shopping with Linda 10 minutes ago. I'm here at the mall for a job checkup. Since your friend took away my client, why not stick around with me? Boss, you're kinda making me work overtime, and it's super obvious. Obvious? I've been racking my brain all these years on how to spend more time with you. So this is why I've been working overtime all this time? Wrap up everything this lady liked in the store. Simon suddenly told the store clerk. The clerk was dumbfounded, probably because they had overheard our entire conversation. So, the chairman's fiancée isn't that lady but this one right here? I was taken aback. What for? To make you feel better. I didn't understand. Later, Simon, acting a bit crazy, said it was for checking on the stores. Still, he bought me things from each one and had them sent to my apartment. Trying to stop him didn't work, so I eventually decided to go with it. It's not like he'd noticed some money missing. When he dropped me off at my apartment's entrance, just as I was about to get out of the car, he locked the door. Not inviting me up. The dim streetlights outside cast shadows in the car, highlighting his gentle and intense gaze. It's late, you should head back. It's only 8, is that late? I'm afraid I won't be able to control myself later. Lily, so heartless. I knew he was putting on a show, but my heart still melted. Leaning closer, I meant to peck his cheek, but he turned his head, and our lips met instead. I was too shocked to react before he pulled me in close, his strong arm wrapped around my waist. My heart raced. My hands found their way to his arm, the atmosphere in the enclosed space growing intimate. Our bodies warmed up, and I felt breathless. And right then, my mom showed up. I was floored. How's her timing always so spot on? Simon and I looked like two kids caught sneaking around, obediently following her upstairs. But she just asked if we had eaten. After we said yes, she asked how Grace was doing, and Simon said his mom was on vacation. Next, she asked about work. I couldn't take it anymore. Mom, if you have something to say, just say it, stop beating around the bush. I know her too well. Fine, I'll say it directly. She looked at Simon. When are you two getting married? My heart skipped a beat, and I jumped in. Mom, isn't that a bit rushed? She stared me down. I'm asking him, you zip it. Auntie, Lily and I are dating with marriage in mind, no doubt about that. As for when we'll tie the knot, Simon glancing at me, I'd do it right now if I could, but I have to respect Lily's feelings. What's happening? My heart is in chaos again. When I finally propose successfully, I'll be sure to tell you and my mom. Propose? Isn't this moving a bit fast? We just started dating today. It's not fast, Lily, we've known each other for so long. I was stunned. How do you always know what I'm thinking? I'm not sure when my mom left, but suddenly it was just us in the house. Simon wasn't leaving, his gaze fixed on me. Your thoughts are written all over your face, it's not that hard to guess. All right then. Continue. You should head back. We were interrupted by your mom, you owe me. By the time this lingering and intimate compensation was over, I was left with glistening eyes and swollen lips. Now will you go? You're much easier to sway when drunk. He sighed, pulling me close again, resting his forehead on my shoulder. Do you know I've waited 7 years for this moment? To hold you openly and rightfully. His breath tickled my skin, making me shiver. Yeah, I get it. Time to go. Later, I learned that Simon was sometimes in the car picking up Evan all those years ago. Just waiting for Evan to get out of school, he'd watch me almost daily. Apparently, seeing me after school became a habit of his. The day finals ended, the umbrella? He sent it with his driver. But back then, family business pressures meant he had to grow strong enough to take over, making distractions impossible. That's why, after weighing his options, he quietly left for abroad. But even abroad, he'd secretly keep an eye on me. By the time I was a junior, he worried I'd start dating, so he'd often fly back to see me before I graduated. I eventually pieced together the rest of the story. No wonder all those coincidences happened. Turns out, every encounter was all part of his grand plan. My mom's been hanging out with Simon's mom a lot lately. Even though nothing's set in stone, they've already picked out names for the future kids. And I'm at a loss. Looks like if they want grandkids sooner, we'll have to step up our game. Simon was sitting on the couch, looking at me with intense eyes. It's getting late. Aren't you heading back? He raised an eyebrow, closing in and grabbing me as I tried to sneak away, taking a deep breath. Not going anywhere tonight.